Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Marissa McCassin, and I work for the University of Alaska Fairbanks Cooperative Extension Service. I work for a specific program called the Tribes Extension Program, specifically with the Aleutian Pribilofs Islands Association, or APIA. So I serve the tribes of the APIA region with all things food. So food preservation, gardening, you name it. I make sure that folks in our communities are connected with resources. And so Kiana Holland, who is the food sovereignty administrator for APIA, and I put on this short webinar series over the spring to basically bring some introductory gardening information to folks in the Aleutian Islands. So last week, I had a webinar that I sent out on intro to gardening, and then this week will be intro to hydroponics. A quick note that this is mainly focused on folks for the Aleutian and Pribilof Island region. So if anyone from the region has questions, we're going to mostly focus on folks from that region, but I do think somehow my link got sent out in the UAF Cornerstone, so I know we might have a few extra guests, so welcome. But I'm very excited to introduce Scott Faulkner, who is from Fairbanks Soil and Water Conservation District. He is a hydroponics wizard that has a website full of information that I've used multiple times about hydroponics, but I'm going to let him go ahead and introduce himself and teach us all about hydroponics this evening. So thanks for being here, and we are excited for the class. So off to you, Scott.
Thanks, Marissa, and hello, lovely people. Greetings from Fairbanks. I know some of you may be from Fairbanks, but greetings to everyone. The nice thing about what I'm going to share is pretty universally available, and we can actually connect it with your local soils and sands when we get a little bit further in the presentation. You'll find that very interesting. The great news about hydroponics is that we can do it all year round, irrelevant of our weather outside, and that's kind of cool. So let me get my presentation up here, and I think I'm able to share. I work at Fairbanks Soil and Water, and I am a agriculture and natural resources educator, and I work with local community people. I work in schools. I teach in a homeschool cooperative program, agriculture programs. And I also teach at a local charter, Effie Cochran Charter School, and I teach agriculture there as well. And we use a lot of indigenous techniques in with it, and I'm going to share some of those with you as we go through this as well today. All in the name of reducing cost, producing fresh food, and utilizing our natural resources. So you might find that interesting. First, we'll probably go through a lot of conventional techniques for things that maybe you've seen before or heard before in hydroponics. Then I'll introduce a couple new concepts. So we do encourage, as my co-teacher here, Mel Sykes, and we teach conventional hydroponics first. It's the safest, best way to have success, and that's where I'm going to show you as we go through this presentation of ways you can start successfully. So that's nice to do that. We've been working in hydroponics here for over 4 years and have integrated hydroponics into over 8 schools here in our local school system. We've taught hydroponics all the way on the northern coast, all the way down into the islands. Mel and I have traveled to teach hydroponics. So we have very successful programs that continue on in those and continue to produce, in some schools, producing their lettuce for their lunch programs, and also to give to food banks and donate to other people. So it's really nice. It's a great program to do that with. All right, so this is an old system. We'll go through the different kinds of systems that was down at Effie Cochran Charter School. This system was, and we see a student here who's harvesting lettuce and getting ready to transplant some. We'll get through that here. So what is hydroponics? Basically, we're taking the soil out of growing plants and we're growing it in a water medium instead. However, once we take away the soil, we take away all of the wonderful things the plant interacts with. And essentially, conventional hydroponics sadly becomes like a life support system for plants, and we have to provide all their needs. We'll go through all of those in a minute. So we put a nutrient-rich solution in, and we transmit it to the root systems of the plants in different ways. We'll go through the basic systems as we go through the presentation here. And please, if anybody has a question, do we want to hold those to the end, or do we want to do them throughout?
It's really up to you. I said that folks could throw them into the chat, but it's up to you if you want me to interrupt or if you want to save them for the end.
Yeah, I can't, the chat went off my screen when I went to the share screen. Yeah. So if you want to interrupt, if somebody has a question, Marissa, if you would introduce the question via chat. Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks. The neat part about hydroponics is we can do something as simple as setting a system on our counter in our kitchen without really introducing a lot of expenses or things as large scale. We see here on the right, Chino Hot Springs Hydroponic Systems, part of their systems. Of course, they take advantage of their natural hot water source there to help heat their buildings, and that makes them a lot more viable for the energy input there. Here's Anchorage Greens on the left, and we'll talk about these different things. This is also referred to as climate-controlled agriculture, and there's a couple other names you'll see that hydroponics fall into. And here are the systems that we're familiar with, that we're comfortable with as homeowners and small scale just starting into hydroponics. On the left one is a small grow tower that we've featured in workshops here in Fairbanks, and we've done workshops, and people come to the workshop, build these, and then take them home with them. So that's a nice system. So we call those towers. We'll talk about those a little bit more. And then on the right, we have a deep water culture hydroponic system, and we put it in a tank. It doesn't have to be in a tank, but we do that so that folks can see the root systems as the plants grow. And then those pink mats are sitting on top of the water, and then that way it adjusts as the water level goes down, and then water and nutrients again are added back in to help that out. You'll see later where some teachers have included fish in those, so that's pretty neat, the different things that you can do. So why do hydroponics? Why not just have our topsoil or a soil mix or garden mix and plant in the house? Well, you certainly can, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what's really neat, if you're curious, is to set that side by side, but to do a hydroponic system next to a conventional soil-based system. And in the hydroponics, we're going to see almost universally that the plants are going to grow faster in it. The saturation on the root system is much greater. The oxygen levels are much higher in the water when we introduce air to it, and that stimulates the plant in a much greater way. And we can also introduce, much like having an IV in your arm, we can introduce whatever the plant's asking for, whereas normally we do it for through the secretions of the root system and asking for what it wants. We can watch the plant and give it what it wants much quicker through the system, and it responds very quickly. Even in hydroponics, we can do foliar applications of things to help it respond to it, but that's another subject. Another thing is we don't have weeds to deal with. There's no competition. In our area, we deal with the bird vetch who likes to come into our garden systems and compete and generally wins, and taking things away, and reduce pests as well. Generally speaking, hydroponic systems don't attract a lot of pests to them. Sometimes aphids are attracted to them, but we can keep them down through natural methods and different things. And we'll talk about those here in a second. Here we show the acceleration of growth in the systems, in this tower system that was in our office. We see plants. We'll go through the different, from starting seeds all the way to harvest in our presentation here, but I just wanted to focus really quick and show the fast rate in a 20-day period that this miniature romaine lettuce grew from just being transplanted into the tower on the left on February 4th and being harvested on February 24th on that. Notice you see a really elongated leaf on the lettuce on the right. That could probably be regulated by having the lights closer to the plant. The leaves tend to elongate. New seedlings tend to hyperextend when the light source isn't that close in artificial systems. So here's our basic types of hydroponic systems, and we'll talk about one once we learn these basic ones. Crack key is the most basic. So we know the basic needs of our plant need oxygen and they need nutrients. So the crack key system in the top left there, when a plant is put in a medium and the root system goes down into the nutrient-rich water, there's nothing else introduced. There's no air stone and there's no air pump, which we're going to find is always in other systems. That's the unique thing about crack key. There is no energy source in it. As the roots extend down into the solution, the water level's going down as the plant's utilizing the water. And then in exchange for that, so now there's more oxygen exposure. So rather than the pump putting in the oxygen, the roots are more exposed to the oxygen, as you see in the right picture in the crack key, as it goes down. And the theory is that pretty much by the time the water's used up, the plant's finished and ready to harvest. It does grow a little bit slower, but it's an excellent, very, very low-cost way to grow plants on your counters, and you can use almost any kind of container. Of course, glass would be preferred. Things that aren't going to leach into your food-safe type containers can be universally used to grow crack key method in. The one in the top middle is wicking. The media is put in. When I talk about media, I'm talking about an expanded clay ball. It's a really lightweight, it looks like a marble, but it's very porous and lightweight. And it's the same size as a marble. And then those are put in, and those help support the plant structure, and then the root system goes down into that. In the wicking system, a wick comes up from a water source, the reservoir below it, and then wicks up, like a cotton wick, goes up into the bed and brings moisture to the plants. We don't see that system all that often. We're going to find we favor a couple other systems, and that you see those used in commercial systems. You won't see a system like this frequently. On the top right is deep water culture. That's what you're going to see that we have learned to favor for multiple reasons, and I'll go through those as we look at some other pictures of installations. But the concept is really neat. So just like in that glass fish tank we saw earlier, which this is basically a cutaway of that fish tank, we have the floating mat that the plants are set into cups that are cut out, that have holes in them, so that the roots going to go down through, but hold the media that holds the plant structure. Then the plant grows up from that, the roots extend down into the water. And then the mat lowers as the water level lowers, and then new water and nutrients are introduced as it goes down. An air pump sits outside of the tank and then constantly blows air into the air stone. The air stone makes the water molecules smaller so that the dissolved oxygen can now reach the root systems of the plants. And it also moves the water around. So there's several things taking place with the air being introduced. Even in larger systems, sometimes a pump's introduced to move that water around. If we know about living things in water systems, we know that water movement is really important, and keeping it aerated is. We want to keep everything in an aerobic status and not in an anaerobic status, because we're eventually going to get to the spot where we're going to talk about bacteria in here, and we want that bacteria to be very active and the different types of microbiology. Bottom left, nutrient film. Oops, oh boy, that makes it move too. Bottom left is the nutrient film system, where it relies on a pump. So we have a reservoir at the bottom that's pumping air into and keeping it very aerated, and then the water pump pumps that water up into a tray, which is at a slight angle, so the gravity moves the nutrient solution down the tray. And as it does that, it washes over the root systems and then drains back into the tub, and it goes through the cycle again. Great system, very frequently used. However, it does have its downfalls. We like to put our systems in so that they're low maintenance, that they're teacher friendly frequently. But for anyone using them, this system is prone to leaks. There's lots of places where water goes in and out, that water can jump out of the trays and follow plant structures out of it and tend to leak. It's also, with our amazing power systems, if the power goes out, the water stops. We can let our plant live without light for a little while. We can let our plant live without a couple other things. But one thing we need to do is keep our roots moist. have that nutrient solution. So they'll go a short time, a day or two, before it's not recoverable, before a plant, depending on where it is in its growth cycle, so it can't recover. So that is the downside of the zone. It leaks a lot and is dependent on power all the time. Whereas in our deep water culture system, the air stone can go out for a little while and we're still okay. In the bottom center is a continuous drip system. You may know these, some of these are known by different names, by bucket systems, and a few different names. You may recognize them. The continuous drip system has a pump that continuously runs and is dropping that solution through the media and down to the bottom. So similar to the wicking system, but it's much more, saturates much more than that. And then on the bottom right is aeroponics. Aeroponics is yet theoretically a more rapid way to get oxygenated nutrients into the nutrient system, into the rhizosphere or the root ball. And it literally uses a pump, a high pressure pump, to spray through nozzles the nutrient film onto the root system. So you get a lot higher concentration of oxygen in this system. We do not try this system. I think it's a fantastic system, but boy, when something goes wrong, we have mess. Mess becomes a big issue with this one. A lot of our systems are in schools or in businesses or homes, just the same. We don't want big messes on our floors in those, especially in the wintertime with moisture on the floor or in the cold. That causes a lot of problems. So meat system, I just don't highly recommend that one. So again, here's the type towers. The two left towers are ones we built here. So you ask, which system is the tower? Why didn't you list the tower in these systems? I'm going to go back to it. So the tower is essentially a nutrient, the one in the left, the nutrient film transfer, except it's in the vertical form. And it's sometimes called a rainfall system, where I think Mel put a picture in here. She did not. Okay. There's a pump that sits in the bottom bucket, and it has a vertical column that goes up to the top and sprays out over the top, and then the water trickles down the sides over the roots, just like it does in the nutrient film system, except that's pumping at one side, allowing gravity for it to travel from one end of the tray to the next, and then returns back to the basin or the sump pump area. On the right is a commercial that's called a lettuce grow system. This is the tower. This is our favored tower here. We don't like their light system, but we make our own light system for it. But the tower itself is wonderful. It looks like a spaceship is what we usually call it, and it doesn't leak. So here we have it on carpet in our office, and we never worry about it because the plants aren't able to transfer the water out of the system through the main plant structure, which sometimes happens in some systems, and then it leaks off of the plant. But this system is wonderful at allowing the water to travel down through the rainfall system, getting on the roots, but not traveling out of the grow site that the plants are in. And again, these are small cups that sit in here that have holes in them. The roots go through, and then the plant's suspended. And we'll talk about different materials. We talked about the clay pebbles already, and then we'll talk about a couple other methods here. These are deep water culture systems. This is the system that I designed, and I call it the river system because, again, it's from learning about river health and how fish live and all, and plant life was my inspiration for this system. Let's just look on the left one. It's easier to understand. So we have a deep water culture system on the bottom. On the left of that, on the bottom tray, there's a pump, and you'll see a line coming up, and you can't see my pointer, I know, but I'm imagining you're seeing me use my pointer.
We can see it, actually.
Okay.
It works, yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It moves up the left side and drops it into the top of the second tray. And it flows through the top tray. You notice the trays may look familiar. Those are snow sleds. And within about 5 or 10 minutes, the kids can be out sledding in them. And the idea is to not cut that many holes. That is the whole idea of this system, was for teachers. Simplicity, high production, low cost, easy accessibility for parts. You'll notice that all of the stuff that Mel and I have developed are that way. We can get all this stuff in Alaska. It's not that crazy. Generally, the hardware store has it. and we can go get it there or get it to our place fairly easily here. So the water travels across the top, and then there are two drain lines at the top right, and it drains back down, and you'll see the lines right here coming back down from the top tub down into the lower one. And that system is running all the time, constantly pumping about 400 gallons of water per minute from the bottom tray to the top tray and going down. Each one of these sleds, I know it's hard to tell the scale, is about 4 foot wide, 2 foot deep, and they hold about 15 gallons of nutrient solution in each. And then there's 4 lights on each one of those trays. And then on the right side, we actually integrated a nursery system into it. So it actually has a second pump and pumps up to a nursery system with an ebb and flow or a flood and drain system in the top in a different kind of tray. So that was a neat system, great for commercial use. On a smaller scale for us, it just, it's neat and it works, but a lot of work. And notice we also have fans going. Plants also like movement. It builds the structure of the plant when alternating winds. I've done experiments with alternating winds where we're blowing from the left part of the day we're blowing from the right, and it builds a lot more crispier lettuce when we do that. So when we start our plants out, and we have some more trays on that, in the back you'll see one of our trays we typically start out in on a rack, like the rack in the background. The seedlings start, and they're about 2 weeks in there. When the second set of leaves come on, so we have our first cotyledons, and then our second set comes on, we're ready to transplant. These plants that you see here are a little bit older, but they're still fine. They do go to a point where they will, if you've started plants for your garden before, and the plants get root bound in the original starting containers, even in the hydroponics here, because these are not seen soil either, they'll still get to us. They'll stalemate, and they'll be hard to get back to growing or grow rapidly. So transplanting them right after that second set of leaves comes on is generally the ideal one. You can see the floating mat, which you'll recognize as a poly piece of insulation, but 1-inch insulation board in there. We've checked to make sure that all the different plastics we're using in here are food safe at the temperatures we're using. So that's a very large concern of ours, that we're doing safe practices for the type, anything that's going in or around our plant or its nutrient system. We want to be food grade. So here again is our fish tank on the left that we saw in our office. Deep water culture, or Mel called it here, floating hydroponic system. And then on the right, one of our local educators put goldfish. So here's the thing, why, it makes sense for us to put fish in with this and use the fish excrement to feed the plants. However, we protect our natural fisheries here in the state, and if it's any type of local fish or other fish that can be commercially produced, we're prohibited from doing that, using the fish for consumption. So goldfish would be one fish that can be used in this process, and it's for Alaska students. It's a nice way to learn. I'm not sure how many educators we have in the group, but this is certainly, even if your curiosity gets you to do this, absolutely you can. It plays with the nutrients a little bit. You just have to watch your plants, because the fish are going to alter the water as you do that. Here are a couple more pictures of the nutrient film system. I said there's other names for systems that people commonly refer to things. This is often referred to as the gutter system. And literally people will use gutters and attach them to the side of their house and run water down them and grow plants out of the top of them. This is a system here on the left. And then you can see the open end draining off the water right here. It's draining off there. And if we get good root systems, a lot of times the root systems in the towers and in the nutrient film systems will extend out, and you can see that here. That's probably some root action coming out here from this first lettuce plant, draining down into the drain system, which will frequently get into pump systems. So that's an interesting problem when things are really going well and we have good, healthy roots. Most pumps that we get, the pumps that we use will chop those roots. Then we just have to be careful where that material is going in some of our systems. If we have distributors, it plugs them. Just common little problems, but better than leakage. way better. This system on the right was a wonderful system. This was the first system that I built. This was in our local food bank for a while, and we ended up moving it to the Effie Cochran Charter School and ran it there for quite a while. So this system ran for several years. It's raised lettuce, and it's also raised strawberries. We tried strawberries in it as well that were very productive. We're very happy with it. Notice in the system, the basin is down in the bottom right. Actually, it's in the left. I'm sorry. I haven't looked at this picture for a while. It's over here. You can barely see it. Those blue lines, these blue hoses are draining the water down to the basin. I'm sorry. So plants need basic things, whether they're growing in soil or whether they're growing in a nutrient solution. The first one that is universally needed is light, and we use the acronym LAWNS to teach this. So they need light, sunlight, or equivalent. I'll talk about some lighting needs when we're talking about growing plants in the vegetative cycle, which is typically where we start out in hydroponics with lettuces, basil, and some other herbs. Is the first place to start for great success when you start with hydroponics. And you can enjoy the fruits of it within 6 weeks after planting. You can be harvesting. So light is our first one that we need. Air, as we talked about, especially in the root system, we're oxygenating that and other things that come along with it. We need water, regardless of where it's going to be. Plants need water. And nutrients, we'll talk a little bit about that, but we'll talk mostly about the NPK and the micronutrients that are needed. For that, we do this in the form, typically in conventional hydroponics, we're adding a synthetic salt-based nutrient to it. Hopefully it's not some of those nutrients like Miracle-Gro are antimicrobial, so we're going to want to be careful with those. If you're not doing anything else in a conventional system, those type of fertilizers will work, although I would more lend you towards a system of always send you to a nutrient that is not antimicrobial, and they don't always advertise it right out on the front of their fertilizers. It needs space. Plants need a certain amount of space to grow. So a lot of times when we build these different systems, if we're growing for lettuce, we'll space differently. We'll space anywhere like 3-4 inches from each plant. If they're larger plants, we'll go a little bit wider and lay in different mats with different hole spacings, or maybe different size of cups that they're sitting in so they can have some more room there. And then also the space between the top of the plant and the lights. So we keep our lights variable. We have them on chains, and we can raise and lower them so that space above them is also, so the plants aren't looping around the lights, and then they're also not burning them or anything. Fortunately, we don't have to worry about that with LED light technology. The burning of the plants isn't as prevalent. And then we also need support. And a lot of times in the hydroponic systems, those cups, the media that we have in the cups provide that stability for the plant. Again, our basics of growing our plants are we start out with seeds, viable seeds. We like to source, and I know a lot of some of the seed programs that have even benefited your areas down in the southeast and southwest have come from Baker Seeds, from Johnny Seeds, very good, reliable sources of plants for us, and we can watch out for varieties that do well in our areas in the north. And we tend to, even in the hydroponics, I tend to use more northern seeds. When I grow tomatoes inside, I'll use a Stupus tomato, which is a northern variety of tomato that's very successful in my hydroponics. So we go to the seedling stage. We spend about 2 weeks in the nursery area. We could direct seed. This is a question that's often asked. Can you direct seed into hydroponics? Actually, put the seed into the media and put it right into the system. Yes, you can, but it slows it. So I guess if we think just like a baby person or a baby animal, we go to a nursery first for it needs needs more tender care. And so we spend 2 weeks in there until the second set of leaves go on. And then we move in as a young plant into the system. And pretty much when we're just doing the veg cycle, the vegetative cycle is like when we're harvesting the lettuce. We're not letting it seed out. So we're not going to the flower stage of it. And that's pretty much where most of our hydroponics stop right here, is when we get that nice big leaf and ball of leaves on them. But if we want to go further, which you can grow anything in hydroponics, you just need to provide what the plant needs, and have the right lighting and have the right space and the right nutrients and the right temperature in many cases for them. So we can, and very successfully, as I don't recommend it for first time, but you can do tomatoes is what they're showing here. And I pollinate them myself when I grow them here, and I do a deep water culture, and I'll grow tomato plants. They need more room. I'll grow them out of 5-gallon buckets, and then they have an insert that goes in. I don't think we may have a picture here in the later slide that goes in it. The clay pebbles go in it and lets that larger plant have a lot more room to grow. And of course, you can reclaim your seeds from your fruit as well in some plants. Some people might ask, can we do native plants in the system? If you can get viable seeds, that's been my challenge. But now we have a native seed, a native plant nursery here, so we're learning a lot more about native seeds and doing those. So I will, in the future, once they can provide me with seeds, I'm going to test more native plants in the systems to grow for greens. I'm really excited about that. But I was not getting viable seeds from a couple sources, so I wasn't able to propagate them or to germinate them. I'm sorry. So of course we know the process of photosynthesis is very important for developing the energy in the plant from the sunlight, and it's giving off different things as a result, as a byproduct of the photosynthesis process. Oxygen, the sugars in the plant, the things we enjoy, the things that give the heavy bricks, if you've ever heard that word, BRIX. That's really how tasty, it's the thing we identify as really tasty greens. When you a few of my students at Effie Cochran, we were growing lettuce. We started growing lettuce about 3-4 years ago, and we were growing. They said, "Well, we don't even like lettuce. Why are we growing this?" And I was just patient with them. And one morning I came in, and the strangest thing was happening. I said, "What are you guys doing?" They said, "We're having a lettuce eating contest," and because they never knew that lettuce could taste like that, because lettuce loses its nutrient value, its flavor, after it's harvested is just a rapid descent of that. And by the time we're receiving it on trucks from the lower 48 or even flown in, it's still lost a lot of that. So eating fresh picked lettuce, having it on your kitchen counter, in your living room, in your garage, and being able to bring that in and serve it at your next meal, or at next meal at the food bank, or at the next meal at the soup kitchen or school, is just amazing. And very well appreciated by people who don't appreciate lettuce and fresh greens, because a lot of times we've suffered from not tasting good tasting. It's like lower 48ers experiencing our carrots for the first time, and they realize how fantastic something can be. And that's the difference in doing fresh greens. I told you I was going to talk a little more about the lighting. So, oh my goodness, expense, right? Yes, good hydroponic lights, full spectrum lights are very expensive. You'll see them used in high-tech greenhouses. If you ever have the chance if you've ever toured one of the cannabis growing facilities, they're very high-tech facilities with high-tech, high-end lighting, light deprivation systems, but the great news for us is we're not growing a plant where a cannabis plant is going through its full cycle. It's blooming, it's producing fruit. That's all we need to talk about that for a little bit. But we're stopping at the veg cycle for the most part. So our light need is different. Studies have shown that a shop light that you would, like the lower right ones, like you would commonly see and hang over a bench in your workshop, are generally around a 3,500 Kelvin light. That's the more yellowy type light. And then we can go all the way, now we're seeing this more, the daylight lights in our LEDs are more of a white light, and that can be in the 5,000 to 7,500 Kelvin light range. Those are all the kind of lights we can buy at the grocery store, at Fred Meyer, at Home Depot, Lowe's, all of our resources here in the state. So tests have been done with those in Fairbanks, and in the total growth cycle of a romaine lettuce, there was only 3 to 4 days difference in the finished states of the lettuce. So in our home economics, it doesn't translate to justifying high dollar lights. So really, you can use just about any kind of light you have, although I would suggest around a 5,000 K light is specifically, or a 5 to 6,000 K light is what Mel and I have in every school system that we've put lights in, LED lights, inexpensive ones. And we're happy to share that. And as Marissa said, we have lots of resources available on the Fairbanks Soil and Water Conservation District website. She'll probably share that with you after the talk here. But certainly you're free to look that up, and all of our resources there. We're available to talk to. Mel and I are always willing to share all of our knowledge, all of our resources with folks in our state especially about the things that we've learned, and we want you to be successful as well. And we want you to try this and experience it. Having a timer with your light as well. So most of our, you can get really specific with specific plants, but as a general rule, our lights in the nursery are on for 12 hours and off for 12 hours. And likewise in the other system. And then that can bump up a little bit more depending on the variety of seed. A lot of times, even Johnny Seeds will have awesome materials with when you buy their seeds and on their website to tell you how much light they need at different growth cycles. So that's amazing. So as a plant is finishing out, that light is going to bump up a little bit more. You might bump up to 16 hours of light as it grows. So here is another thing that is commonly asked, is if I have my hydroponics in my house, why can't I just use the sunlight through the window? The problem is that our windows are really high tech, and they have blockers in them that block out some of the important light that needs to get into our plants. And it'll cause your plants to hyperextend over, do its tropic thing and move over towards the window. And it'll be like having your light in the wrong place around your hydroponics. Yes, it can happen. Like if you wanted to do the cracky system and utilize the light that you currently have, try it and see what you think. But we've experienced and will teach that having a specific light, a designated light for your system that comes on a certain amount of time is always going to get your better plants. Here we show a couple different systems. These are 2-foot lights, 24-inch LED lights. And then on the right are 4-foot or 48-inch lights around this tower. We've run this system on the right with 4 lights and with 8 lights. A lot of times I'll start the plants out with 4 lights, and as they mature, I'll turn on all 8 lights to finish them out their last week. This is at a system north of Fairbanks. I'm trying to watch my time too. This is a structure. Notice that all of these systems we've built with materials available at the hardware store, whether you have an Ace hardware or a Lowe's or a Home Depot available. I'm not sure what all you have in all your communities or who you can order directly from. I know Lowe's will ship to almost all communities in the state. This is 1-inch PVC, common PVC, and those are just pressure fit together. Anytime you see our PVC, it's pressure fit. We're never gluing anything together. And if they're tightly pressed, they stay together really nicely. And you can build custom systems around. So the deep water culture system, if you can think of a tub, this is just your regular yellow topped tub like you take on Alaska Airlines and duct tape, like we do too. That's the kind of container it is. So if you lose a lid for one, it'd be a great subject to become a deep water culture. So again, the 1-inch floating mat in it that's been cut out with a hole saw, and the little net cups is what they're called. They're set inside that. And then there's an air pump too. You'll probably see a line coming in here. That's for the air pump. And you'll see the timer over here running with the light. And then that plug below it is for the pump because it's running the pump all the time. Notice another thing on this, and the illustration earlier didn't show it. Notice where the air pump is. The air pump is always mounted above the highest water level in your deep water culture. If the power does go out, and it will, for whatever reasons, even if somebody accidentally bumps it out of turns the power switch to this switch off, or the power, whatever happens, what'll happen if this pump is sitting below the water line is the water will siphon back through the air stone and through your water pump, and you'll drain all your water on your floor. We've seen it. It happens. It really works. So what type of media?
And then two quick
Yes.
questions before we
Yes.
move on to media, Scott. One was, if you were relying on natural light, could you just leave them in the natural light for 12 hours?
Absolutely.
Like, would the timing still be correct?
Yeah, even if these systems can even go outside. So if we didn't even want to have to worry about the window issue and have natural light, you could roll your system out, yes, and try to follow that same light schedule and see how your plants react. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and then the second question was, can these systems be used for root vegetables like beets or a radish?
Yes.
If
yes.
so, would the root just be growing in the water?
Yes. I don't have pictures of it on here. I apologize. I have successfully done radishes, a lot of fun. And I used, if you imagine those trays like we were looking at, like these, except they make one that's like a shoebox size. I used the shoebox size one. And in the top of it, I drilled small 1/4-inch holes. And then I imagine the same system, a little air stone in it and water filled up almost to the top and nutrient solution in it. I started the radishes in soil and got them up to their second leaf where they weren't getting too big of a root system on them. I dropped those, I took them, washed them off, and dropped them in and let the leaf canopy hold the radish plant on the top. And then that way, as the radish ball, the root grew underneath, or whatever type of radish, it could be an elongated one, and it doesn't change it doesn't deform the radish. And I'm telling you what, we had the most amazing radishes as a result of that. Yes, and potatoes can be done the same. I have not taken the time to do potatoes, but I have a friend who does potatoes in deep water culture, and absolutely it's possible. I would love to help somebody with that if they would be interested in starting that. I have not heard of carrots being done, but I'm sure we could do them in a similar way. Okay, we were talking, is that good?
Perfect.
Marissa? Okay. We were talking about the clay pellets. But when we don't never start the seeds in the clay pellets, we either start we set these objects into it. So we either start in rock wool, which you see on the right here, which is kind of made like cotton candy, except it's made out of rocks and it's blown superheated rocks or insulation that we know of. And then on the left are rooting plugs, which are made from organic materials but stay together really well. I'm finding that the root plugs do better with some plants, and rock wool does okay with others. I do my lettuce in them. It tends to be lower cost to use the rock wool, but it's not always as successful as the rooting plugs. Mel always has good success in the rooting plugs. However, the cost per unit is higher. These, for us, we're going to pay 20 to 30 cents a piece for these, and it becomes quite costly. Whereas the rock wool, I'm paying a nickel a piece using Amazon to get resources. And then these set down in the reusable pebbles when they go into the other areas, or if they're going to the deep water culture systems, that's all that goes in is the rock wool or the rooting plug, and it sticks down in the cup. It's the same size as the cup, and it grows through that. A couple different versions of rock wool. They come in larger ones, again, getting more spendy. This would be probably more like the one you would grow a tomato plant in or cannabis in the top right. And rock wool is, as it says here, is one of the more popular ones. Here we are starting out some tips on starting our seeds. And we like to, the viability of seeds is really great. We get really high quality seeds. We're able to, in Alaska, get high quality seeds, with 90+% viability. So that works nice. But I like to utilize all my resource. So we plant a few of them, I'll drop 2 seeds in. So if we don't get one that grows, when they're in that first cotyledon stage, they're easy to pluck because they just have this single tap root. And it's easy to stick a pencil in and stick that tap root down in and put it in a new grow site. So that makes it really easy to thin the crop and get all of your sites 100%, and you look like a master gardener all of a sudden. So that's what I like to do. And I'm not a master gardener. I'm just a guy who knows about hydroponics. So Mel's taught me a lot about gardening, and I've combined it with my mechanical knowledge and knowledge from other friends and biology and put it all together to do what I'm doing. Okay, I've only got 12 minutes left. I need to hurry up here. I think I went through all that. Here are some examples of what the lighting looks like on the chains, making sure it's the common mistake is to get your lights too far away and you end up with a leggy plant. These lights on the left, you can tell, are just the right height. Those lettuce plants look awesome as they're growing there. They're not trying to reach up for the light and spending their energy on the wrong thing. We recommend, again, starting off with leafy things as you start out, even strawberries, and then moving into, if you want to do peppers or tomatoes, doing that a little bit later once you've experimented with a few things. Give some examples of our things we've grown. These are like a romaine. They call them compact or miniature romaine lettuce, and they come in several varieties of them. They're sold by different companies. Nutrients, we recommend just starting out with Mel likes to recommend using the liquid. This is all she recommends is the Super Thrive 795, and that represents your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium there in the 3 numbers that you'll see there. So we start out with a very generalized one that'll grow most of your leafy greens, and that's what we recommend to all of our first-time growers. Other nutrients are involved in the plant. Those are the main 3, the ones we watch the most, but there are many micronutrients that play into this. And then also our water quality. There's so much to cover here. I'm being rushed now, so I'm sorry. Our water quality is really important too. So fresh water, that's a science term, and that means we don't have high salinity in it, and we want to make sure there's no other contaminants or bad guys in it. So having a fresh water source. If we don't have a fresh water source, you can blow down water. You can treat it with bleach, a small amount of bleach, like a half teaspoon for like 5 gallons, and then blow it back down with an air stone, and then you can have a known good water source. If you have to deal with calcium or something like that, it's probably not going to take that out. So that's what we deal with our city water here in Fairbanks. Okay, I've got 10 minutes. I'm going to try to cram this in. So one thing I'm very interested in is not buying a lot of synthetic fertilizer and having to worry about bringing that up here. For a while, if you were buying fertilizer, it was very difficult to even get shipped up to Fairbanks or into Alaska for a while over the past couple of years. And then now the expense of it's went up on our scale, not on a big farming scale. It's just difficult to get. So I said, well, why don't we look to the woods and see what's going on there? And so the solution that I've come up with is, you may know this is a tea, they call them. And so we started making teas. So I take soil from the forest floor. I usually dig down right to the ice level and pull that soil right off the top of that. Very biologically active, very biologically diverse. And I bring that back and put it into if you look up in the top left picture here, you'll see a container that's blowing air up in the bottom. I put the water in there, I put the soil in there, and then I grind up fresh vegetation from outside from a known source, and then I let that brew, and then I feed it that's what I use in a solution in my hydroponics. So now we got the whole plant communicating the way it should with soil biology. And now it's utilizing the nutrients much more efficiently. And as a result of that, we're reducing, I've proven this over several years down at F.E. Cochran, I've reduced the use of synthetic salt fertilizer by 80%. So that's pretty cool. I don't think many people are going to want to advertise that. So we're using local soils, and we're using local plants to feed the soils. And we have the potential of growing local plants. So this as far as being secure, this is, if we want to look at traditional methods with more modern techniques, this is a great blending or a melding of those. So, I'm going to buzz through these. This is the whole soil food web and why it's important. We're dealing with all the things that come out of the soil, primarily the bacteria, the fungi, and some nematodes make it through. However, since in a highly aerated situation in the bioreactor, they're knocked out, they don't reproduce. The bacteria, on the other hand, if it's in a healthy aerated one, they're reproducing every 20 minutes. Fungi a little bit slower, and nematodes will get knocked out of the picture. You may consider those bad guys, but they're definitely a vital part of soil biology. I'm going to keep moving, and it's really fun if you're into microscopes, or get a microscope and to look at soil biology. It's a lot of fun to look at. And there's just a quick picture, and I want to answer a couple more questions. So here's the basic recipe for making I call it mimetic one-tie. One-tie in Aborigines means sandy soils, and mimetic means to mimic or reproduce. So that's what we're trying to do in the hydroponic system. It's taking fresh water, taking biologically active soil, and how do we know if we have that? Well, we can do a soil extraction and put it under the microscope and see what kind of biology we have in it before we even use it, and that's a lot of fun. Happy to share that with anybody if they want to know about that later. About 2 weeks it brews in that cauldron, if you will, blowing air through it as it matures and grows, and then as it's doing that, it's utilizing the resources from the ground plant material. I like to use chickweed. Chickweed seems to be everywhere. In our area, I don't know what greens grow prevalently around you. I actually have grown chickweed in my office to feed my system with. I'll grow clover. We'll look at those in a minute. And of course, the aeration is an important part of it. We don't want it going anaerobic. And what ends up we have is it looks like a southern sweet tea that we add in at a 1:16 ratio into our plant nutrient solution. Here I have students out in our, this is actually in black spruce, which is where I find some very, very excellent biology underneath black spruce, just north of Fairbanks. So that's one source. The earth is composed of amazing things. And every area we live, whether it's a sandy beach, has biology, or a deep taiga forest has biology, or wherever we are, there's biology in the soil and sand. It can be extracted and used for indigenous local plants, because that's what they want. They don't want imported stuff from Indiana. They want local stuff, and that's what's going to make local plants work with local soil biology and local resources. And I'll just leave it at that. And I found that they will work other ways, but that's where they really work the best. So think of sourdough. This works kind of the same way. And and this is like, you'll never read about this anywhere else, I do a perpetual brew. So I keep it going. So I think of it just like mom's sourdough in the kitchen, in the refrigerator. It activates, we keep feeding it, we use it, and relevant to how much we're using is how much we're feeding back to it. And we only let it go down to a certain point so that we keep our baseline of biology on it, and then we keep adding to it as we go. Here's some different things. These are different, these look fancy and complicated. These are conical induction tanks used in agriculture, but I find that they're able to aerate my material the most effectively, because it keeps everything in suspension in a tank like this as it blows up from the bottom. But, however, a simple $17, $20 trash can does the same thing and keeps everything going. This is after I put the solution together, and you can see the biology react, and I say it's like, I'll reserve that. But it really gets excited when it meets the food that we put in with it, and some of that biology's been sitting dormant for a while and starts to feed, and as it off-gasses, is really amazing. And that off-gassing, I don't know the biology, not a health person, not going to claim to be one, but I can tell you when I'm running one of these systems in my office, if somebody in our office has a headache and they come into my room, their headache goes away pretty quick, and I can't explain it. So here we are raising chickweed. I'm raising clover to feed to my bioreactors. One of my students here with a chickweed wig on. It's a lot of fun. The kids had a lot of fun doing that. Here's some clover I've raised to feed it with. Arugula I feed it with. Here we're chopping and preparing it. The blender on the left that I blended up with. The more it's chopped down before it goes into the bioreactor, the more available it is to the plant, to the biology in the system. Other ways of doing this, there are commercially prepared different types of the biologies of the mycorrhizae, which is maybe a hot thing you're hearing about, the fungi, or different blends of different things of microbes that you can put in as well. That works as well. But bringing the soil from outside I just think is the absolute best way, and it produces the best plants. Here I am making some of the mimetic one-tie, showing how simple it could be in a 5-gallon bucket, and I'm getting real close on time here. Is I put an air stone in the bottom, I blend the material going in, here I'm pouring it in, and then I enter the soil. I'm literally dumping the soil into, I meshed up the soil so it doesn't have any clumps, dumping it in, and you can see it immediately reacting to the ingredients going into it. And then it'll work for a couple weeks, as I said. And then here's another bioreactor. This one's been cooking for a while. You can see how rich and deep it's gotten, off-gassing still as it stays active. Amazing. Here's some different commercial fertilizers that we've used, and different types of things can be entered into helping feed that bioreactor. And I played with many different types of specific bacterias and fungi in working with it. Even made my own product called BioRave ATP. But starting out, we don't have to fuss with those. Mel really wanted me to share this aspect of hydroponics to enhance and make it a much more local experience, and also lower costs. Let's see. See if there's anything else here. Are there any questions? I'm just going to click through some more pictures here. I think I've pretty much covered the main areas. I don't know how true you want to stay to the time, or if you're willing to go a little over.
I'm not seeing any questions yet, but I do want to stick roughly to the time, just if it is
sure.
a little bit late in the evening.
Yeah. I'm going to leave it just here on this picture then as we finish. Well, I want to thank everybody for attending and having your time and giving your time up tonight to listen to this about hydroponics. And that I want to encourage you, no matter who you are, how small of an apartment or cabin or you live in, how limited your resources are. If you have at least some warmth in your living area, you too can grow hydroponics at some scale and have fresh plant life. And people benefit from having plants around them. I can attest to that. And it's a great thing. They don't have to be in separate containers outside. People need to benefit from plants being around them. I always encourage people to integrate plants with themselves, not separate them in energy sucking systems. So that would be my big words. And use local things. Think of the ways that former people have done things. They've used local stuff, and that's how I try to think about this. And that's all I have.
Well, this has been amazing, Scott. I know I learned a lot. I feel like as a new to hydroponics person, I'm always trying to keep in my head lighting systems and pumps, and those diagrams were super useful. And we recorded this, so we're going to be able to share it out with folks that maybe were making their kids dinner or something during this time. And so super grateful for your time. We were really happy to have you.